Hello everyone, today we are going to cover transport of molecules across the cell membrane. But before then, first I would like to introduce you cell membrane to you. Then I will continue with, today we'll see two types of transport of molecules, uh, simple diffusion and mediated transport. Let's begin with the description of the cell membrane. The cell membrane is a biological membrane that separates the interior of cell from the outside environment. You can consider the cell as a ball. The outer surface of the ball represents the plasma membrane and the interior of the ball represents the cell. And this plasma membrane or cell membrane controls the movement of substances in and out of the cell. So, cell membrane consists of phospholipid bilayer. What does that mean? As you can see, these blue molecules are lipids. And when we look at in detail, the head groups of these lipid molecules are hydrophilic, or in other words, water-loving. They can interact with water outside the environment without any trouble. On the other hand, tail parts of these lipid molecules are water-fearing, or in other words, hydrophobic. They don't like to interact with water, therefore they tend to come together, and by this way they can hide themselves from water. In the cell membrane, there are also a variety of different kinds of proteins. And before going further to transport of molecules, do you have any questions about the cell membrane? No? Okay. Then let's move on to the transport of molecules. The cell membrane is permeable to a few small lipid-soluble molecules like vitamins or some uncharged gaseous molecules. Can you give me any example of these gaseous molecules found in our body?
Oxygen.
Oxygen, of course.
And
what else?
Nitrogen.
Nitrogen. Excellent.
And carbon monoxide. Oh, or carbon dioxide. Okay.
The cell membrane is permeable to these molecules. In other words, these small molecules can freely pass through the plasma membrane. And this process is called as simple diffusion. So simple diffusion is defined as essentially the movement of molecules from high concentration to low concentration. Molecules move from high to low concentration because they tend to reach a balance in terms of concentration on both sides. And therefore, their movements do not require any energy or any assistance from any other proteins. Is it clear what is simple diffusion so far?
So for simple diffusion, is that mean the inside and outside membrane will get balance, or actually is getting balance, or
if
is
you
still
just leave these cells by themselves, it can reach a balance. But there are some other transport types which we will see in a minute.
Oh, okay.
They just prevent the cell from reaching a balance. Because if the cell reaches a balance, then there will be no movement of the cell, which is not very good for the cells.
Okay.
So the other transport type, which is called mediated transport, is a little more complicated than simple diffusion. As we have just seen, small molecules can freely pass through the membrane. But can you make any guess how can these larger molecules be passing through the membrane? Do you have any guess?
Like a gate to open up to let the bigger things come through.
Gates, you mean in the membrane?
Or something that acts like a gate.
You are getting there.
Okay. Or so in memory, there are some protein inside the memory. I think the protein can have many functions. Maybe some gate or yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Actually,
okay.
To cross the cell membrane, larger molecules require membrane transport proteins. These membrane transport proteins reside within the membrane, and they provide a continuous path for molecules to pass through them. And yeah, they are basically serve as gates of the membrane. And there are two different types of transport mediated by these gate proteins. First, yeah, as you can see, these are the proteins, and with the assistance of these proteins, molecule can pass through the membrane. First one of these transport is the facilitated diffusion, and the other one is active transport. Let's first look at the facilitated diffusion. In the facilitated diffusion, membrane transport proteins called channels play a part, and they create a pore through which molecules can pass through by diffusion, as we have just seen in the previous one. As in simple diffusion, molecules move from high concentration site to the low concentration site. Therefore, they do not require any energy. Channels can be opened or closed depending on the needs of the cell. And when they are open, molecules just pass through these pores, and thereby they cross the membrane. What causes the channels to open? Actually, there are several different mechanisms, but we are going to cover them in the following lectures. So let's move on to the second type of mediated transport, which is active transport. Active transport is the pumping of molecules or ions against their concentration gradient, which means that the molecules are forced to move from low concentration site to the high concentration site, unlike the simple or facilitated diffusion. This process actually requires an energy because molecules have to be pumped out of their concentration gradients. And this time, our protein is called transporter, which is different than the channel proteins. Different how? So, first, our molecule binds to a specific site on transporter on one side of the cell membrane. Then this transporter protein changes its shape to expose the bound molecule on the other side of the membrane. After that, this molecule dissociates from the transporter protein and finds itself on the other side of the plasma membrane. So, channels are just opened or closed, but these transporter proteins changes their shape, so they are different things. Is that clear so far?
Yep.
Okay, do you have any questions about active transport? Or any other type of transport? Because otherwise, I'll give you an exercise. I want you to define each type of transport shown in this slide. Ju, can you make the first one?
First one is the active one. So is that the active transportation? Okay. The second one is just simple diffusion.
Okay. Can you tell me why this is active?
Because it's from the side of the low density to high density. Mm-hmm. So that should require the energy to make the transportation realized. And the third one thing.
What about the second one?
Oh, the second one, because the second one, I think there are no protein there. Mm-hmm. So I think that particle would be very small particle that can go through these kind of membrane very easily. So mm-hmm. that is the diffusion, and from the high density to the low density. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. And third one is still from high density to low density, but they require a gate. So that facilitated diffusion.
Facilitated. That's right.
Facilitated. Okay. Facilitated transportation. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So to summarize, today we've covered three different types of transport. First one was the simple diffusion, in which small molecules can pass through the membrane easily and freely and easily. The second one is like diffusion, but this is for larger molecules. Still do not require energy because it is from high density to low density, as you said. And the last one is the active transport, which requires energy because we need to pump the molecules from low density to high density. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining.